Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bears on Tap, a podcast about the Chicago Bears presented to you by On Tap Sportsnet. I'm your host, Brandon Suarez. You can follow me on Twitter at BDon300, and you can follow my co-host, Quentin, at Butkus Today is the Senior Bowl episode. Quentin is down in Mobile, Alabama at the Reese's Senior Bowl practice this week. He's been out there the last few days taking a look at prospects, and this day, that there's that saying every year that you see, the draft starts in Mobile. I'm sorry. I tried to practice it before. Alabama's still going to kill me, but the draft starts in Mobile, and Q's down there right now chopping it up. And I saw him in some press conferences. I saw him down on the not down on the field, but pretty damn close to the field, looking at players and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see what he's found in his couple days out there, just observing.
Yeah, no, it's been great. There's been some serious talent down here, and it's awesome to see in person because you just get this, you get a real feel for guys' speed and strength on a much more real level than you do just, watching clips and watching the broadcast version or whatever it might be. Just seeing it in person and seeing how it's really translating, the physics of it is all working is a factor that I think matters a lot with these guys.
Yeah, and I think, too, it's that first kind of event towards starting the draft process. You have the Senior Bowl, you have the East-West Shrine Game, you have all these different little showcases. But after this, it's pro days, it's the combine, and then it's the big show. It's the NFL draft. So this is that time to get your best foot forward in front of actual NFL coaches. These are guys that, if you do well and Gatsby likes you, like maybe you'll end up a Bear. I know that probably doesn't sound too appealing to a 22-year-old college football player. Like, yeah, I want to go be a Chicago Bear. But the check's still cashed the same way. And I think, too, one of the cool things for us is I saw
Didn't Skoronski say he wants to be a Bear?
I don't know if he said that. I didn't hear.
He did. Yeah, Skoronski said he wants to be a Bear.
His grandpa's going to be mad. His grandpa's going to be awfully, awfully upset. But
yeah,
either way you look at it, I think leading up to the game, the practice is almost more important than the game because you obviously don't want to get hurt in the game. But the practice is where they're trying to fine-tune things, see what they can work with in practice and to try and develop once you get to the NFL. And what are some of the guys that you've seen up to this point that maybe nobody had heard of going into this week, but they're kind of, showing their ass right now?
So one quick thing before I jump into that, this is like seeing the practices. It's something that you don't get to see, like we never see how a college team practices, how a pro team practices, how these guys work to get better at their craft and how they take coaching, how they handle adversity, how they handle a guy in practice beating them and the very next rep come back and try to fix it, and that's all very valuable stuff as someone who's looking at the draft, but more importantly for the coaches who are here and working with these guys. So exactly, like I just wanted to point that out as I think seeing the practices for this is probably invaluable compared to just seeing the game. But as far as some guys who were probably a bit less known, I'm going to start with one guy who might be fairly well known to some, but I think he should be known more, is Keanu Benton, the Wisconsin defensive tackle. And so Benton, he was a two-time state qualifier for wrestling in the state of Indiana in high school, which I think is a huge thing along the defensive line. And in his time at Wisconsin, he was kind of labeled as a run stuffer, but I think he is a good pass rusher. Like I've seen flashes in his tape of really nice pass rush, and I get down here and it starts really flashing more consistently. And you start to see maybe the scheme asked him to be more of a run stuffer. Maybe they asked him to really control those run lanes, but that doesn't make him less capable of being a one-gap penetrating player. And that's what he's looked like down here, is a guy who can get after the quarterback from the interior.
Wait, hold on. You're telling me a guy that at Wisconsin he didn't have to rush the passer that often because he's in the Big Ten and he's on Wisconsin. Those games are disgusting. Those are like 17. Those are like you run the ball, we run the ball, and then we both punt. You know what I'm saying? So I think, like you said, perfect opportunity to see what he can do in some of those individual drills.
Yeah, absolutely. Another guy who has been a nice surprise is edge rusher / interior guy. He's played some 3-tech here, but he was an edge rusher at Louisville. Yaya Diaby.
Oh, that's a fire name.
Yeah, no, it really is. So he is standing, let's see, 6'3", 265 pounds. So he's a good big frame, powerful frame. Really the ideal size weight that you want for a 4-3 defensive end. And I'm curious if some people might view him as a 3-tech because of how he's been played here. But I actually didn't notice if he was playing more defensive end or 3-tech today. I know yesterday it was almost all like 3-tech. But he has some nice burst, nice speed, good strength, and he's just a guy who can be, I think, has the potential to be a real solid player in the NFL as a defensive end in a system like this, like the Bears run. Now let's see. Another guy who I have enjoyed watching is Keon White at Georgia Tech, another defensive end, very similar mold to Yaya Diaby. He is more explosive, though. He has some serious burst. And one thing that didn't show out on his tape as well as it has here, especially like being in person, is his strength. He is stronger than what I remember him being on the tape, which means either it wasn't fully translating to the TV screen, or he's playing more freely, or maybe he's just beefed up a little. But he looks strong out here.
And his not so fun but 100% true fact is he is 0-1 lifetime against NIU. I had to sneak that in there once you said Georgia Tech.
And then one last guy. So I'm looking at the national team roster. Like,
is that Getsy's team? That's Getsy's team, right?
I believe Getsy's coaching the national team, which is unfortunate for Getsy because it is the less talented team. But
it sounds like just our luck.
Yeah, but there are some dudes on it who are very interesting. And so the way that these practices work, I mean, is Getsy coaching American? Getsy's coaching the American team. So Getsy's got he's got the Pro Bowl team.
He's got the cream of the crop. All right, we'll go over that roster and some of the players that you like on that roster.
Just so you all know, the way that it goes, it's not like the coaches are out there the coaches are involved with each practice and like that, and they're out there working with the players for both of them. Like there's like a 3-hour practice, I want to say 2 or maybe 2 hour, 2 or 3 hour practice at 11. Then there's an hour break. Then there's another 2 or 3 hour practice for the other team. The coaches are all involved with it. But so the last guy on the national team, which is not the one that Getsy is going to coach Saturday, is Cody Mauch, who, like everyone knows Cody Mauch, who's interested in the draft. But he has really proven in the last 2 days to me that he belongs, because there's always that question of a guy coming from North Dakota State of like, you might have been beating up on lesser competition, smaller, less athletic guys, less weaker guys, whatever you want to call it. But he has looked just fine here. Like he is supposed to be here, and he is not overmatched by anyone here. Anyone more than anyone else would be from a more powerful school, from a Power 5 conference, anything like that. He looks like he belongs on this football field. And he has played snaps now at center, guard, and tackle here. And he has looked good at all three, in my opinion.
So there's a goal line package somewhere in the bag if he can do all that. Like maybe some tight end. Number 69 has reported the package.
I mean, I'm thinking San Francisco might draft him as emergency quarterback, but we'll see.
Well, yeah, and we'll talk about the events that were the NFL this weekend because an old friend got thrust into the spotlight shortly after we talked about him a few weeks ago. And I mean,
Yeah.
terrible spot for Josh Johnson to be put into, but I think it's kind of ironic that we just brought him up a few weeks ago, and then sure as shit he's in the NFC Championship game. But yeah, other than that, so who are some of the like marquee guys, like some of the top end talents, maybe more towards the first or second round guys that are in attendance?
Yeah, so I mean, if I'm being honest, among the guys that I already kind of named, I mean, I think Keanu Benton's probably a late second round pick, and Cody Mock ain't getting out of the second round. Like that's
You're a lineman.
That's
You're a lineman that plays multiple positions and does it well. You will have a home.
Yeah. Some of the guys on the as I look at the other roster, the American team, I'll start off with the O-line. Matt Bergeron he's a stud. I wasn't sure of that coming down here. I knew he was solid. He is a stud. Like, he has looked very good down here. He has been stonewalling people in one-on-ones. He has been smooth handling pass protections as a unit, along the offensive line, passing guys along, creating running lanes, working combo blocks, working single blocks. He has looked very, very good, and he is pushing up towards that tier 1 offensive tackle on my board after this week, or after these last 2 days, I should say. And then another guy that's really stood out to me a lot is Oklahoma right tackle Wanya Morris. Coming into this, I was thinking he was a 3rd or 4th round pick. I'm not sure he gets out of the second. I mean, he's just such a smooth athlete out here, and he has all these traits that you want in an offensive tackle physically, and he's a bit raw still, but he's gotten so much better in the last year that you feel like there is real opportunity for him to continue getting better, and he just is continuing to put it all together, and he looks better than his tape right now. And his tape looked better than it did the year before, and so on and so forth. He's
progressively getting better each year.
Yeah, it's exciting to watch when, like, Wanya Morris is a guy who I noticed him, like, when I was watching for Oklahoma for Anton Harrison, I had to pause and say, who's their right tackle? Because he looks good.
Laser pointer. Who's that guy?
Yeah. And not that's not to say Anton Harrison wasn't good. It's just there were plays where Wanya Morris was just like jumping off the tape. And it's not every play. Some of his tape was ugly, but it seems to me that he has consistently improved it as I got to later games in the season. And to here now, I think he's probably the 3rd best offensive tackle here in Mobile. After Darnell Wright and Matt Bergeron. And that's not including DeJuan Jones, because DeJuan Jones, he practiced day 1 and he did not practice day 2. So I assume he's done for the week and called it. But he would be if I include DeJuan, it would push Wanya down to 4th. But yeah, that's not where I think a lot of people had him coming into this, and it's probably not where I had him coming into this.
DeJuan is the 6'8", like 375 guy, right?
Yeah, with 7'2" wingspan or something.
He doesn't need to show much more.
Yeah, he looked real good day 1.
we saw what he did day 1, but we also have seen just the course of history. A guy that size doesn't get out of like the top 10 just based off size alone. Like if you can move a little bit, you're good. Yeah.
And then there's 2 more guys I can mention here. Minnesota center John Michael Schmitz. I have been a silent skeptical hater on him for the last month because I didn't see it in his film, and I couldn't find good 2022 film for him because all I could get was broadcast view, and broadcast view for a center is just not really what I want to be basing opinions on. And
wasn't their best year this year either.
it was his best year this year.
Right. Well, yeah, I'm saying Minnesota though. It wasn't like
Yeah.
maybe a couple of years ago, like the team had more success, but they're a team that just slams the ball up the middle. So I don't see, their running back. What's his name? Muhammad Ibrahim, I think it is. Their running back is all conference. So I mean, if he had an all conference year, I would hope that this guy had a great year as well.
Yeah. And I mean, by all accounts, he did. And I wanted to see it though. And I couldn't get my hands on it. And so I remained skeptical and just sitting here saying, I didn't see it in his previous year's film. Like I saw some flashes, but I didn't see what makes him such a highly regarded prospect. But day one down here, I kind of was still walking that same line. Day two, today, he balled out. He looked really good in a lot of ways. Very mobile, very able to hit spots down the field on the run in screen passes and zone blocking that not many guys can, and to hit it aggressively with power, which is a trait that can be hard to find. Like you can find guys who can get downfield and get in the way, and even that is a little harder to find for them to get in the way of the right person at the right time. It's a hard trait to quantify. It's a hard trait to do consistently.
To not get the illegal man down the field penalties, like all that shit matters,
Yeah.
Timing matters.
Yeah, timing and just getting in the way at the right time, and getting in the way of the right guy and getting in front of the right guy. But he showed a real ability today to find the guy he's supposed to find and knock him, not just get in the way, but actually knock the guy, which can be tough when you're talking about a guy who's 300 pounds trying to chase down a guy who's 180, and that guy's a lot shiftier. That guy's going to cut on a dime, and you still got to hit him.
It's also tough to chase down someone when you're 230 pounds and they're 200 pounds trying to get out of bounds on the last play of regulation before the end of the game. But yeah, that's another thing that we will touch on when we're done talking about the Senior Bowl.
And go ahead. The one more guy I'm going to mention is he's actually probably not a fit for the Bears because he's 240 pounds. But Iowa State edge rusher Will McDonald is just – he's a dog. He's an absolute animal. Like, I think I'm gonna use this example.
We can trust Iowa State over the last few years off the people they've put in the league. Breece Hall, Montgomery, put some good players in the league.
Like, the example that I'm going to use is, like, Darnell Wright is a dude, right? He's a stud of an offensive tackle. And in one-on-ones today, McDonald was the way that the American team was structuring it was one-on-ones. Will McDonald across from Darnell Wright, go. All right, bring it back. Will McDonald against from Darnell Wright, go again. So just 2 reps right in a row, same guys. First rep, Will McDonald cleans up. Like, nasty move. Nasty, just circle rush. Gets past him, gets by him, bends like crazy for it. Very nice. So I'm expecting Darnell Wright to come back and just plow him this time. Like, Darnell Wright's a stud. He doesn't lose twice in a row like that. Will McDonald pulls out a disgusting spin move on him, flies by him. Like, Will McDonald is going to go earlier than he has been. Like, right now, I think his average projection is like 58. I'm not sure he's hitting the second round. I'm not sure he's a fit for the Bears, but he's a fit for some teams, and he is going to go earlier than he is even considered right now.
Well, Q, if you didn't read the news, we're getting Khalil Mack back, bro. So I don't know if we'll need McDonald, but
yeah.
I mean, shit, it all sounds good to me. Who's out there quarterback-wise? Anyone of note? I know there's one quarterback that didn't make it. He also had an eventful weekend as well.
Max Duggan's out here.
Ooh. Is he in good shape? Because he got battered at the TCU Georgia game. He was getting smoked that game.
You
Towards the
know,
end of the season, he was getting beat up a lot.
From what I've noticed, the quarterback play in general here has been subpar, to put it lightly. But also, I am just very focused on the pits. So, like,
I was going to say,
I
yeah,
couldn't
you've
even
only
tell you
mentioned
if some of the passes are completed because I'm just staring at the big guys, you know?
Pause. I was going to say, Ron will like listening back to this episode. We got to get you guys T-shirts that say like "only linemen" or something. 'Cause I'm like, I'm sitting here. I'm like, okay, maybe there's a couple like a receiver or something, maybe a DB. But I guess we'll have to see because there's still a lot.
Well,
so
I got I got Robert Schmitz here in the room with me, and he's watching receivers and corners. If we can bring him on.
Yeah, no, that works.
Let me dive in the area. I can come over there. Don't worry about it.
I'm in my luxurious hotel room, and you guys are also in yours.
Amen.
What's going on?
How we doing? What's going on?
Welcome to the show. So tell us a little bit about yourself before you get going, and then.
Oh yeah. Okay, so I am a Windy City Gridiron film analyst that I love talking through Bears film every single week, covering the ins and outs of football and as well as what's going on with our favorite team. And I'm here with Quentin as we cover the Senior Bowl because there's just too much stuff to watch. And so if we wanted to try to even maybe cover everything, then we needed at least a couple people. Probably needed a third. Probably need Jacob so that he can watch the receivers and corners. But I like the position group, so I've been covering them. What do you want to know about? What can I tell you about? Would you prefer corners or receivers?
Let's start receivers because I think that's the more polarizing position for Bears fans. I know we went with a couple corners last year in the draft. I don't know if we'll, necessarily go for a corner this year in the draft, maybe a depth piece. But I think that receiver is a position that we could see drafted here in May or at least affected in free agency just due off of what we've got on the roster now.
Absolutely. And you're totally right. The only issue that the Bears have at receiver is that so right now they've got a hole at wide receiver 1, but at wide receiver 2, Darnell Mooney, wide receiver 3, Chase Claypool, wide receiver 4, probably a free agent, right? Whether that's like a DJ Chark or a Jacoby Myers or a Alan Lazard, probably somebody. Right.
Yeah.
And then you got Velus Jones, who's just a 3rd-round pick, cutting him. And then you got ESB, who I don't want to make it sound like we're locked into ESB, but it's a more crowded room than meets the eye, isn't it? That said, there's some sweet receivers here. I mean, I know CHGO just put out a sweet video of what Jaden Reed said after practice. He said he loves Justin Fields and he has been dominant here in Mobile. Michael Wilson's one of my favorite receivers in the class, mostly because of the value you can get off of his injuries, but he's a 6'1.5", 215-pound fast mover. I mean, quick breaker on the inside. He's going to get you a lot of separation. Reminds me, I don't have a great comp for him. I mean, my head says Keenan Allen, but I don't actually know if that's valid. But because most guys inside just can't move like that. And so on the American team or on the national team, those two have really stuck out. On the American team, a lot of what I'm saying relies a little bit more on tape because guys like Jonathan Mingo, who had a really good day today, had a really poor day yesterday. Guys like Xavier Hutchinson, same story. Much better day today, great short separator, but not an outside dominator. I feel like Rashee Rice, the big star of the I don't know, Senior Bowl this year, at least of their receivers, is just not really lived up to things. And I could gush and gush and gush about the tight ends, but with Kmet likely to get extended, I just don't know how much you need to know about the fact that Luke Musgrave is extremely fast, that I really like Will Mallory, especially if he falls past like the 4th round or something like that. Payne Durham rules. He's just probably going in the 3rd, if not the 2nd. There's some really good players at tight end. The Bears just don't have the draft capital. Look, in a world where they trade down from number 1 to number 4, and then they trade down from number 4 to number 9, and then they trade down from number 9 to number 15, and then they trade down from number 15 to number 22, and they just get all picks. Yeah, and it's like, freaking, like, we're throwing 9 lottery tickets. Then, like, yeah, of course I would love a tight end. But I completely get what you mean. That the draft board, just calling it like I see it, the draft board it does not shape up super well with what the Bears need, because they needed, I'd say, like an A1 receiver that they could draft in the first round. And there's just nobody worth taking it 4 or even 9 in this draft at receiver. It's just a little too risky. So they can build in the trenches. Hey, we got some sweet needs in the trenches that Q talked to you about. And there's some sweet depth at corner. Like, I mean, the draft is deep to find somebody. And unless we want to start Kendall Vildor for the rest of our lives, the Bears could probably use a sweet corner at some point. As silly as it would sound to go from Kyler Gordon to Tyreek Stevenson out of Miami, it would be a savvy move if you thought you were going to get rid of Jalen Johnson. And I say that looking over at Q because we haven't really talked about this yet. Everything's up in the air for the Bears. And I mean everything. Pretty much everybody except Darnell Mooney and probably Justin Fields. But unfortunately, I have to say probably, like, their jobs are at risk until the moment they're not. You know, there's just nothing defined for Chicago. And so because of that, who knows what they'll take in the second round. And while there are some, like, again, if you want me to keep going, I can keep telling you about some seriously sweet players at these positions. But I kind of get the sense that outside of Jaden Reed, because Reed is that short separator that the Bears may find some value in, they'd probably have to move Mooney like into either a more slot heavy role, or they'd use Reed in the slot and they'd just figure out what they were going to do at X receiver. I guess that depends on what free agent they pick. I just doubt that a Bears receiver is here at the Senior Bowl, even though there are some guys that I think have an NFL future ahead of them.
Yeah, and I was going to say I've seen a little bit of Reed at Michigan State. He was an electric receiver.
Awesome.
Big playability. But, yeah, Mingo is someone – that's Ole Miss, right? Like, another kind of big play guy, but I know it's a little bit different down there in Lane Kiffin's system. And I don't know. A lot of times you see that the guys like going more to the combine and showing out there than the Senior Bowl. You know, like I had mentioned before you got on with Q, Stetson Bennett didn't go down there.
Right.
I know. So I know Hendon Hooker obviously can't participate, but he's down there, right? Like doing the interview portions and the professional portions. So what are your thoughts about maybe like if he's available late to pick him up as a backup?
So it's worth mentioning that I'm of the opinion that you want the best quarterback that you can get as a backup quarterback. I think this idea that you can go find a Tyler Huntley is exceedingly rare, that you can find a quarterback that somehow is not just a good quarterback, but also plays a similar style to your main quarterback. Quarterbacks don't grow on trees, right? Yeah. Like, let's just put it this way. Brock Purdy and Trey Lance, not the same. But they picked Brock Purdy because they thought he was the best quarterback available at that time, or maybe they just thought he was the best value. I don't know what's going on in San Francisco. But in the Bears case, to use an extremely this would never happen, basically, but to make a point, if Andy Dalton became available and he was available to come to Chicago for a relatively cheap deal, that might be a better backup quarterback than a rookie like Hendon Hooker, who's already 24 going on 25 by the time he hits the draft, especially since you got to remember that he's coming from a Josh Heupel scheme that basically, I mean, it functionally doesn't work in the NFL because the hashes work completely differently in college. And so you can create so much space on a hash on this side and then stretching your receivers all the way over to the right side. And then in the NFL, that play comes in here, the receivers come way in here, and you just don't have near as much room to run that kind of stuff. And so it doesn't work the same. And that's, I don't know. It's not that I'm anti-quarterback. I'm pro-draft quarterback. Why not? Right? Yeah. But at the same time, I also think that I think that the kid from Shepherd may be a better bet. You know what I'm talking about? Like the one at the Senior Bowl. It's Shepherd University. I don't know his name. I would love to tell you I know his name. I have had the luxury of not having to care about quarterbacks this draft. But I think that if you ask somebody who knows, like, there are some neat quarterbacks. I just don't know if it's going to be Hendon because he may go as high as the third, and the Bears are still going to be looking for a straight-up starter because they're so barren at some of these positions.
Perfect. On the other side of the ball, though, we didn't talk about any of the corners. So do you see – we talked about one, but do you have any other guys outside of Stevenson that maybe you think could step in and be third corner, fourth corner on this team?
Julius Brents could be the first corner on this team. Kansas State's Julius Brents, second rounder, extremely long, and especially considering how much the Bears. It depends on how much they want to run quarters. I don't know how well you know coverages, but basically there are a couple of these coverages that require some pretty heavy zone drops. But if the Bears stick with a steady diet of cover 2, you could theoretically take a man corner and convert him into a pseudo zone corner that just beats the snot out of anybody releasing off the line, lets them go, and lets the safeties eat. Speaking of, there's some pretty solid safeties out here. Christopher Smith out of Georgia and Sidney Brown out of Illinois can both flat out play.
I've seen Sidney Brown. Yeah.
Sid Brown's a great player. I don't know if the Bears are going to go safety immediately. Like, there are some safeties that I could point out that might be one-to-one replacements for Eddie Jackson, but why create a hole that you need to fill at this point when the roster is again so bad? You may be looking for your safety replacement in a year or two, but you probably won't be looking for it now. I think Darius Rush could play in this defense. I think Q Blue Kelly out of Stanford. Darius Rush is South Carolina corner, big, long. Caillou Blue Kelly out of Stanford could probably play in this defense. He's got quick feet. I had a couple picks today, as a matter of fact. Great reaction time. Learns really well. So he seems like he would do a really good job in a read and react defense like what the Bears are trying to run. Rejon Wright is a name from Oregon State that probably wouldn't fit in the Bears defense, but he's playing pretty well. And maybe Riley Moss out of Iowa could play a little bit in this defense. But it's been tough to stand out for corners in this one. Mekhi Becton is literally the only good corner that I haven't mentioned yet. So I guess that brings us to like 5 or 6. And then there have been some other corners that have just kind of gotten burnt, such as life in the defensive backfield.
So we do have someone in the comments, a guy by the name of Scott from Iowa. He wants to know a little bit more about Riley Moss.
So I've really liked Riley Moss's tape, especially his game tape. I would tell you that, in my opinion, here at the Senior Bowl, he's had a tough time because I think he's had to go up against 2 of the better receivers in the Senior Bowl in Jaden Reed and Michael Wilson that have done a lot of people dirty so far. Riley's got a nice blend of more size than you would expect for a guy like him, and also a decent amount of speed, relatively fluid hips. He's kind of a jack of all trades corner. There's nothing I'm looking at Riley Moss saying he's the best in the class at that. But I know I can't remember their name, but I know Iowa's defensive coaching is really top notch. So I trust his fundamentals. And I think you can see on tape just how valuable that is. I think he's probably going to end up closer to the 4th, maybe the 5th round than I would like, because I'm cheering for the guy. I think he's a fun player to watch on film, but some of the other corners are just flashing that little bit more. That the late third's about the earliest I could see him right now. He looks like he belongs, but he doesn't look like he belongs at the top shelf. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, like he looks like he could be like a role player more than like top end guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is, not necessarily a bad thing for this defense right now, because that's a position that we do need to add more players to. But kind of to your point earlier, we're not going to be in the position to add people that are playing safety and other positions like that where we actually have 2 quality starters. You know what I'm saying? So we're just kind of trying to fill the holes in this roster for the second consecutive year. One final thing before you pass it over to Q, do you have like a free agent, someone that's not there that you really think would be a great fit you want to see on this team next year?
You mean like besides Daron Payne? I'm not allowed to pick the primo guys, right?
No, you're not allowed to pick the guy that Washington Commander Twitter was asking for Justin Fields to be traded for. Absolutely not.
Okay, so it's a bummer, and I can't believe I've talked myself into him, but I think Allen Lazard makes a lot of sense, but not for the reasons that I think everybody else would think. You're going to hear that and you're going to be like, oh, like 750 yards. And I'm like, well, it's sort of mostly positional versatility. Like, you would be basically talking about the same signing as Equanimeous St. Brown, but like supercharged, because he can play power slot. He can play Z receiver. He can play X receiver. In theory, Allen Lazard gets you injury insurance to every spot on the roster so that you can go into the draft and you can take the best player available. And if a receiver that you love doesn't fall to you, your team isn't ruined. Right? Yeah. We're not going to do the pace building where we already architect how the draft is going to go. And therefore, we have to trade up to make sure we get the guys that fall to us because we really bet on them in the first place. In this case, it would be like if you got DJ Chark, he's an X receiver, and now you've got 2 X receivers, and hopefully Claypool, pushes him to the bench. But you're going to move Chark in the slot a little bit. I know football's not that literal, but it's kind of all over the place, right? With Lazard, he can separate in short areas in the red zone. He can post somebody up in the red zone. He can play X receiver in blocking roles and in passing roles between the 20s. He can move around and play Z receiver. He can motion. He can basically do everything. And so in him doing everything, he opens you up the flexibility to look for the best player you can get as a wide receiver 1. But if he was the only ad this season at receiver, I'd still be pretty bummed.
2 final things, Super Bowl winner, and then where can our listeners find your work at?
Super Bowl winner, I keep going back and forth. We're talking about better team versus better quarterback. Right. Yeah. And so it's a matter of how healthy is Mahomes' ankle? Did the Chiefs already reach the emotional mountaintop and that now is the bonus game? Right. Or did 2 weeks fix that? Is Mahomes living out his Jordan moment and will refuse to be denied? There's a lot of questions going into this one that really makes it a phenomenal football game. We're not talking about KC Tampa Bay the other year where it was both of their tackles are out. They will lose, right? And then people would say, but Mahomes. With this one, Q, I think it goes understated how poor the Eagles' offense has looked in the last couple games. Yeah. Their defenses have just dominated so hard that it didn't really matter and nobody really cared, right? But if the Eagles can only get 7 points out of their first 4 drives, just like they did against San Francisco before the game got away from San Fran, I think that's going to put them in a bit of a hole. I just don't think the Chiefs, who have 2 weeks, and no, 2 weeks won't fix everything. If Travis Kelce's back spasms become an issue, no way. But if they don't, I think the Chiefs have every ability to give this Eagles team a game. They're just stacked at all levels. So, I would tell you, I think it's going to be a 27-24 game, and I have no idea which team is who. Does that make sense?
That's fair. Yeah, no, that's valid. I will say that's kind of what I was expecting with the AFC Championship, and that's what you want to see at this point of the season. But, it's the 2 top seeds, if I'm not mistaken, the 2 number 1 seeds, which I don't know when the last time that's happened. So,
in a deadlock, I tend to take the more legendary player because, like a narrative doofus, I just assume that they're going to continue to write their story. You know what I mean? It's the whole Patrick Mahomes is going to beat Jimmy Garoppolo. And guess what? For 3.5 quarters, he was not. And then he threw 1 sweet pass and changed fate, basically.
So I'll say to counteract narratives, if Jalen Hurts wins the Super Bowl, the new NCAA football game that comes out, the Road to Glory, is literally just going to start with Jalen Hurts getting yanked in the championship game.
It'd be awesome.
All right, where can we find your articles, and do you have a podcast as well, or just
Absolutely. So you can find my podcast channel on the WCG Windy City Gridiron podcast channel. Search that, look for Bear With Me, Building the Board, and start with those 2. As far as YouTube goes, you can find us on Second City Gridiron, where me and Quentin and a couple others are going to be running a Building the Board series where we try to put together a Bears-specific draft board. So not just a big board, but something that really attacks the Bears' needs and goes through position by position, both talking through all the draftable players so that we can get a sense for who's who, but also tailoring them to what the Bears do and how much that impacts the board, which should be a lot of fun. First, the intro episode's up now, so you can go take a look at that. We'll start to dig into it a little bit more as the Senior Bowl help us solidify things. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Robert K. Schmitz. Thanks so much.
Perfect. I appreciate you for joining us, brother.
Of course.
Thanks, man. And the QB that Robert was talking about out of Shepherd is Tyson Bagent. Not sure how you pronounce that.
The shepherd's pie, man.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, all right. Senior Bowl, probably one of the coolest events that you've been to. What has been your favorite moment so far, just from the first? Because you probably got what? You got another 2 days there. You might have a better one on the horizon. But so far, what has been your favorite thing?
Veets Bar is awesome. Go in there, but I mean, it's like everyone here knows to go to Veets, I guess, is what I've learned. And like last night, we saw Luke Getzey in there briefly, just in and out. It wasn't like he was hanging around the bar just pounding them, but
he wasn't going Kyle Lorton in there.
Yeah, we saw Ian Rappaport in there. We saw Wink Martindale in there. We did
he's a dude, bro. Martindale.
Yeah. Yeah, Wink Martindale was in there, and handful of other folks, and there were a bunch of Bears people in there, like bunch of people from a bunch of other teams. Like, it was just a cool atmosphere. And another favorite moment was just when I was able to get to the area of the stadium I wasn't supposed to access because the gate was just open and people were going through it, and got the good view of the offensive line drills. That was pretty cool.
You're like, I just want to see the big uglies rolling.
Yeah, man.
Like, there ain't nothing.
They're like hidden out in the corner where like you can't see them well, and like you're having to zoom 5 times on your phone to get a good video, and then it's grainy. It's like, man, I just want to see them upright.
It's like when you go to buy like a ring or like some really expensive jewelry, and like they got to bring it out from the vault. That's where the linemen are kept. They're kept in the vault.
Yeah,
but it sounds like a lot of fun. I'm glad you're not down there solo, because I definitely know how solo content trips go. You still got to get it done either way, but you got a little team with you. But all right, so let's talk about a couple things. So let's reel it back to this past weekend. What did you think of the 2 games, and then what do you think of the Super Bowl moving forward?
Man, I can't help but think that I've had this theory, or this theory with the Super Bowl since like 2015 or so. I don't remember who won in 2015, but that the team that went through more to get there will win.
So
and it's been pretty accurate. Like
the battle-tested team, I guess if you will.
Yeah, like when you had the Peyton Manning Broncos, who went through a hell of a schedule to get there, battled through every playoff game close, and were barely there because of it, up against the 15-1 Panthers, who stormed through everybody, who won. Yeah. When you had the Nick Foles Eagles, who were scraping every ounce they could to be there, up against the Patriots, who just blew straight through everything, except for the Chiefs, but who won? I mean, it's like
the years that Eli Manning won his Super Bowls. Look at those years.
Yeah, I tend to think the team that is more battle tested wins this game, because I think it takes everything in you to win this game.
I'll even go as far as saying the Eagles haven't really played a meaningful game since that game against the Cowboys, and Jalen Hurts didn't even play that game.
Yeah. I mean, really, last week was supposed to be meaningful, but then it wasn't, because the quarterback situation just got screwed. And like Robert said, it was 7-0 for the first 4 drives.
Well, they did that thing that we talked about when we played them, where it's like they'll just fart around for 3 quarters and then pop off and get 21 in like 3 minutes.
Yeah,
they're just they are a very misleading team by the way they score, because they'll hit you for a lot in a hurry and then they won't score for the rest of the game.
And also,
honestly, I think they only kicked.
Never forget.
In the second half.
Never forget when Ray Lewis was taking like deer antler oil or something to fix his bicep. Crazy stuff can make injuries just disappear.
Yeah.
And it's time to get crazy for these guys.
Aaron Rodgers, in his post-game interview after they beat the Bears, was just like higher than shit. And yeah.
Oh, and Mahomes wasn't last week?
Dude, so let's get into that game. So a lot of stuff happened. I saw a play get whistled dead after it was already ran and run again. I saw whatever happened at the end of the game, where obviously I just started tweeting NFL rigged, kind of in a troll job, but also like, yeah, what the fuck is going on? Because this, like the end of that game, the way that game was officiated, and then there was 2-1 in the Eagles game, the Devonta Smith catch. It turned out that it really wouldn't have mattered anyways, but in the highest level, in the conference championship games, you can't have officiating issues of that magnitude, right? Like it's got to be disheartening. And I'm not saying that the officials cost either of the team the game because, well, Bengals, the argument could be made. I'm not a Bengals fan. I just lost a little bit of money. But that drop in the first half right there, huge for momentum, right? Because, like you said, the Eagles didn't score for their next 4 drives. If the Niners maybe get a stop there, maybe they're the first team that scores. Maybe they play the game a little bit differently. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, it could be completely different based on that. Like, I mean, that with the KC Bengals game, I mean, I have money on the Bengals, so I was a little sour. But if I'm being completely honest, the money was somewhat of a mental hedge, or what's it called?
Edge.
Emotional hedge. That's the word, emotional hedge. Because Pat Mahomes is a Red Raider. I'm a Red Raider. Go Red Raiders.
Wow.
And
I was screaming at my TV, bro. I'm like, damn, man. Like, that's really how this game's about to end. I thought we were going to get free football, dude. Overtime conference championship would have been lit.
But, like, one thing that I look at in that game with all the ref stuff, I mean, Bengals benefited from some calls early in the game, too. Like, it wasn't – I don't think the calls were lopsided in total. I think they were just lopsided at the end, which, you know, you can still squint at and say, like there's something up there. But, like, I mean, I think generally the game was – calls went both ways for the most part.
Hashtag NFL rigged. For the upcoming game and I think too, though, like I said to Robert before he got off, it's the 2 number 1 seeds. It's 2 teams that dominated all year. There's an argument that could be made that maybe the Bengals get the number 1 seed if that 17th game is played, but it never was, so we'll never know. And there's no telling if that game would have been different in Cincinnati than at Arrowhead. But I think that either way, you have 2 great quarterbacks. You have one great quarterback and one quarterback on his way to greatness, I'll say. Yeah. But you have Sirianni and Reed both battling their former teams. Like, there's a lot of good storylines for this game. The Kelsey brothers.
It's the Kelsey Bowl.
Kelsey Bowl, yes. They're such polar opposites too. Like
I know.
It's so funny. I see their podcast clips. They have a good podcast. I don't listen to all the episodes, but I see some of their clips and watch some of their videos. They're pretty damn funny.
Yeah, it is funny. I don't know. I just have a hard time believing that Nick Sirianni is going to beat Andy Reid, but we'll see.
Dude, he's going to be Philly's such a scumbag city. Like, they were yelling at kids. They were yelling at people taking their kids to the game. Sirianni's been motherfucking people from the sidelines all season long. Like, I like the energy. If that was my coach, I'd run through a brick wall, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But the asshole in me, after all the smoke settled, after Travis Kelce called the mayor of Cincinnati a jabroni and all that, it dawned on me that a bald man that wears a visor that has no business going to the Super Bowl is going to the Super Bowl, and I cannot allow that man to win. So I am fully invested in the Bird Gang. Bang, bang, Bird Gang. Jalen Hurts, my fucking quarterback. Like, the Eagles cannot let Matt Nagy get this Super Bowl, and that is where I'm at. I can't let it happen.
All right.
That's
I'm
where
not betting
at.
against Pep and Andy Reid, but we'll see.
I haven't decided if I'm just gonna maybe do some props. It's a tight line. It's a pick 'em either way, and
Is it a pick 'em now?
it's a 1.5. I think it is, but it opened as a pick 'em. It was open as a pick 'em.
No, it opened technically at Circa. It opened with Kansas City as 2.5-point favorites, and within the first hour, the Eagles shifted to 2.5-point favorites.
Okay, because I didn't see that,
and then it's just moved.
I looked on DraftKings, FanDuel, Rivers, and all that.
Yeah, that was like right after the championship games ended.
Yeah, dude,
it's one of the biggest line moves I've ever I think probably ever that it moved 5 points in an hour.
Oh yeah, someone just hammered.
So I saw that, and I put money on Kansas City to win outright, and I bought a 0.5 point, put some more money on Kansas City +3, and
oh, dude, we're getting like Robert said, 27, 24, 27, 26, something goofy like that. But, yeah. I mean, I think we covered everything. Senior Bowl. You said the game is this Saturday, right? Is it on like NFL Network? You know where it's broadcasted?
I'm not sure. Probably ESPN, I would imagine. One of the ESPNs probably has it.
Perfect. Shit. Do you have any wrap-up thoughts before we close this one out?
I don't think so. I'm hoping to have my off-season simulator out here in the next week or two. But aside from that, I think that's all I got.
Well, perfect. Today we were joined by my co-host with the most down there at the Senior Bowl, Quentin at Butkus Stats, and he's also joined today by Robert Smits with the Windy City Gridiron and the Bear. You said Windy City Gridiron, correct?
Yeah.
I was going to start going in on the podcast, but I know there was 2 of them, and I don't want to butcher the names, but I know he said Windy City Gridiron, so yeah, I know you can find his work there. They're doing a lot of work, different position groups, and then also just specific to the Bears team, players that will probably be interested in. So take a look at some of the YouTube work that they've put together, even outside of On Tap. No free plugs, but we'll give a free plug for someone that's on the show. And then obviously stay tuned for all of our work. I know Alap's had some stuff coming out. Quentin, I know you've had a lot of articles coming out. And please. Check
out my Senior Bowl daily notebooks. Yes. One should be published tonight or tomorrow morning. I'm right now, and I'll have another tomorrow as long as we don't get rained out. And even if we do get rained out, I'll have a wrap-up thoughts one.
Perfect. Well, you know where to follow them at Butkus Stats. You can follow our podcast account at Bears on Tap, and you can follow me at BDon300. We'll be back with you guys again. It's probably I'd say Wednesday night next week, just to kind of recap everything Quentin saw at the Senior Bowl. Probably talk a little bit about the game, do a little bit of maybe some of the betting on the Super Bowl, as it is the last football game that we'll have until the XFL, USFL, and all that. But I mean, we're probably not going to be betting on that stuff. But there will be some financial opportunities for our listeners. We wouldn't want you guys to lose out on those, and we'll be on the air, so we might as well talk about it because it is a football podcast at the end of the day. But we really do appreciate you for joining us on this week's show. We'll be back with you guys next week, and bear down.
Bear down.
Bear down.